Police, Mr. Caudan Professor Dhananjay Jerry, CSK, GOSK, FAS, Vice Chancellor, University of Mauritius, Professor Narelle Howell from the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, Queensland University of Technology. While respecting all the protocols, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the presentation of the research findings by the National Road Safety Observatory. The National Road Safety Observatory was launched in Mauritius in 2020 in collaboration with the University of Mauritius and the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, Queensland University of Technology. The National Road Safety Observatory is to serve as a centre of excellence for road safety in Mauritius and is responsible for coordinating data collection, monitoring, recording, delivering training, and leading research in road safety. Before proceeding with the presentation of the findings, I would like to invite Mr. Dharamdev Natu, the Director of Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit, to address the audience.
Honorable Alam Minister of Land Transport and Light Rail, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, Mrs. S.D. Kajadal Robert, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail, Mr. Mortality, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Traffic Branch, Professor Dhananjay Jerry, Vice Chancellor, University of Mauritius, Professor Sanjeev Stobi, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Academia, University of Mauritius, Associate Professor and Santali, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Planning and Resources, University of Mauritius, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good morning. I have the pleasure to welcome you all for this important function on the presentation of the research findings on road safety by the National Road Safety Observatory, which marks yet another milestone in our quest for road safety in Mauritius. I would like to give you a glimpse of the road safety situation across the globe. The Global Status Report on Road Safety, launched by WHO in December 2018, highlights, I quote, the number of annual road traffic deaths has reached 1.3 million. Road traffic injuries are now the leading killer of people aged 5 to 29 years. The burden is disproportionately borne by pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, in particular those living in developing countries. Global road traffic fatalities, the rate per 100,000 population was 18.2 in 2016. And in the region of Africa, it was highest at 26.6 per 100,000 population, while in Europe, it was at 9.3. The source is the Global Safety Report on Road Safety, World Health Organization. In Mauritius, the corresponding rate of fatalities per 100,000 population in 2016 was 11.8. And in 2020, it was 10.7, with 131 deaths, of which more than half involved vulnerable road users such as motorcyclists and pedestrians. Growing vehicle ownership and rapid urbanization in Mauritius have increased the incidence of road crashes on our roads, while the fatality rate has remained unchanged despite efforts being made on all fronts and various sectors. The socio-economic impact of road traffic crashes and related injuries are not only harming the country's development, but also affecting the livelihood of numerous Mauritian families. We at the level of the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail and the Traffic Management Unit have been ensuring that our road safety strategies are aligned to the safe approach and the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety. Accordingly, we have a national road safety strategy 2016-2025 that is being implemented. As part of its commitment, in line with the road safety strategy, the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail has, in collaboration with the University of Mauritius and Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, Queensland, Australia, established the National Road Safety Observatory, which is now operating and producing material for decision making and road safety intervention. The Road Safety Observatory has as its mandate the conduct of research, capacity building, and outreach in partnership with other stakeholders and to improve road safety in Mauritius. It has up to now carried out studies on three important themes of road safety. The research projects are, first, the road traffic death and injuries, the shadow to GDP and welfare in Mauritius, part one. Second, understanding road user behavior and attitude in Mauritius. And thirdly, understanding pedestrian use of crossing facilities in Mauritius. The finding of this research project undertaken by the observatory through the University of Mauritius will be presented to you today. Obviously, road crash data collection is most essential for research work, and the police is helping a lot in the timely collection of this data, which is now going to be carried out using an improved mobile app installed on tablets. Additional training is going to be provided to the police on the use of the updated version of this mobile app. The data that thus collected is automatically uploaded on the Road Crash Data Management System, or CMS. I wish to point out here that the technical staff of the TMRSU and officers of Statistics Mauritius have been trained on the use of the CMS IMAP software, which is a web-based software used for mapping and analysis of road crashes. The observatory has conducted training of technical staff of traffic management and road safety unit, and more training will be provided to other road safety practitioners in various fields of road safety, such as application of the safe system approach in implementation of road infrastructure project and traffic management scheme. The National Road Safety Observatory is also working on outreach program and communication strategy with proactive and reactive traditional social media involvement. Very soon, we are going to launch a website for the observatory, which will be a road safety knowledge sharing platform, complemented with fact sheets and infographics on road safety related issues. Above all, it is going to serve as a repository for research findings and related road safety materials that are going to be shared with all stakeholders involved in road safety. To conclude, I must say that together we still have a long way to go to reduce grief and sufferings caused by these tragic road trauma and inestimable loss incurred by the nation as a whole. With the collaboration of the stakeholders, we should be able to maintain the activity of the observatory. Most importantly, to have supporting road crash data from all sectors, police, health sector, insurance companies, and so on, without which no research can be carried out. I hope that these reports will help in one way or another to influence decision making at all levels, in all sectors, for improvement of road safety. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Nadu, the Director of Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit. I would like to request Professor Dhananjay Jury, Vice Chancellor, University of Mauritius, to address the meeting.
The Honourable Minister of Land Transport by Trail, and also Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, Mrs. Caudan Arts Centre, Minister of Land Transport and Light Rail, Mr. Matthew, Director, Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit, DCP Tuju. We also have Professor Narrow, from the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, University of Queensland, Dr. Hariram, Dean of Faculty of Engineering, university colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. With your permission, I think I should remove this, because I can see we're 3 meters, there's 3 meters minimum between us, so I'm vaccinated and have got my negative PCR, just to reassure all of you. So good morning to all of you. I'll just be quick, I have 4 minutes, so I'll try to stay within the 4 minutes and make 3 points. The first one is a question that I put here, is what was our motivation at the University of Mauritius to set up the Road Safety Observatory, working closely with the Ministry last year in March 2020. Well, it was crucial for the university, it is crucial for the university, for not only the University of Mauritius, but for any university, to respond to society's needs and help solve problems. The problem of road injuries and death was and still is an alarming one in our country. When we started discussions in 2019 with the TMRSU, we had in that year 130 fatal accidents in our country. In 2020, despite the pandemic and lockdown for over 2 months, we had 119 fatal accidents. We have to address the problem, and this cannot be done just by the UOM working on its own. I'd like to stress on the partnership with the TMRSU and the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail, and also the partnership with CARS-Q. Professor Haworth has not been able to travel to Mauritius as we had planned, but has been contributing hugely from remote to all the projects. So a big thank you to you, Prof. Haworth. I know that you are listening to us online. In leading research on road safety issues, developing effective responses, delivering training, and coordinating data monitoring, we are responding to SDG 3, and precisely to target 3.6, which is reduce road injuries and death. We invest a lot in SDGs at the University of Mauritius, and a recent exercise showed that we're not only addressing SDG target 3.6, but we're also addressing 47 targets out of the 169 targets that we have spanning the 17 goals. I know the SDGs fall under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade. We'll be delighted to work closely with your Ministry, Honourable Minister, to further consolidate our actions in that direction. The second point I want to make is how are we addressing the problem of road accidents and what have we achieved so far? The 3 research projects, as mentioned by Mr. Natu, have been completed, where we attempt to better understand the causes of road traffic injuries and death from an economic and behavioral perspectives. The researchers will tell you more about their findings. I won't dwell too long into that. But it is important to know that in just about a year, despite the pandemic, we've been able to complete 3 research projects. That is, for us, an important achievement. And while completing those research projects, we're also training research assistants, because all the projects have involved research assistants. And I must commend the faculty and the Dean of Faculty for really championing all those projects at the level of the university. But as you will see, it doesn't only concern the Faculty of Engineering, because it's a multidisciplinary project. When we talk about attitudes, when we talk about behavior of the public, it also concerns other faculties, such as the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. So that is a very important aspect to highlight about the multidisciplinary nature of those projects. And the third point, where I'm being very critical here, and you know, raising the point of the question as to whether we are impacting on society through the various research that we are conducting. And I want here to stress on the importance of impact. It's not just because we have research projects, we're training research assistants, and we're getting funding for that, and we may be publishing. This is an end in itself. I think the most important here is that we need to solve a real problem. And the impact that we're making is very important. So we should set clear targets. And like for example, one of them that I thought of is, are we able to halve the number of deaths by 2026 in our country? This is just 5 years down the line. Are we able to do that? Halving the number of deaths would mean getting from about 120 to 60, which is huge amounts. But are we able to do that? Let me just tell you that in June this year, 2021, we had 53 fatal accidents. So if we go on that trend, which is one more than in 2020, and in 2020, Mr. Natu reminded us we had 119 fatal accidents. So we are on a similar trend. We may at best be at 119 or more than that. So it's still be alarming. We have to intensify our fight against road accidents and death. And can we, for example, have a country like Sweden, down the horizon there, and say, well, Sweden has got 21.6 deaths per million inhabitants. We have 100. Halving would mean 50. So can we reach 50 in 5 years? This is what I would mean by setting targets and goals. So we need to work harder to achieve our goals. We're not there, but with joining hands together. I just heard Mr. Natu talking about WHO, and in the same report, the WHO referred to that Save Lives technical package, and this is something that should inspire us. The Save Lives, Save Lives stands for speed management, the S, leadership, lives, infrastructure, vehicle safety standards, enforcement and survival. Save lives. This is what we are striving to. So let me thank all the researchers at the university, the Dean of Faculty, the Ministry, the TLRSU, and of course CASQ for their unflinching support. This is a daunting task we have, but we have to live to the expectation of one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Damjay Jerry, Vice Chancellor, University of Mauritius. I would now leave the floor to Professor Nara Howard from the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, Queensland University of Technology, for online intervention.
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to be in such distinguished company with so many important people from the Republic of Mauritius. So today I would like to share some of the story of what we have been, how we have been working together. I will just share my slides. Okay, now where am I? Share my screen. Is this going to work? Okay. Hopefully you can see this. It's okay? Okay. Okay. So I will control the slide. Okay. All right. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity and to talk about the work that we have been doing with the University of Mauritius to help improve road safety in Mauritius through research. So this is part of an international cooperation agreement between our two universities, and although our universities are a long way apart, where we live in Brisbane, the climate is very similar and some things are very similar to Mauritius. So we very much enjoyed the opportunity to learn more about Mauritius and to deliver training in 2016 and 2019. And unfortunately, now I can't be with you, but I really would like to be with you in the future. So the training that we conducted this year was online, and we were looking at training people from TMR RSU in the safe system approach in order to improve road safety in Mauritius. And this safe system approach really has a lot to do with the system of road safety, and that the physical forces on the road users must stay within those human tolerances. And it has principles like that humans inevitably make mistakes that can result in road crashes, and that the human body has physical limits in terms of the force it can tolerate. And so the responsibility for the safety of the system needs to be shared by all those involved in the design, building and management of the system, as well as the road users themselves. And so to ensure this happens, we need safer roads and roadsides that are more forgiving of error, safer vehicles that protect occupants and other road users, safe road users who are compliant with the road rules, and safe speeds, because lower speeds are more forgiving of human error. So what we are aiming for in the end is safe systems on our road that are not only safe, but they're also healthy and livable and give us the sorts of places that we want to live in and to bring up our children in. We've also been conducting other activities, as mentioned before, providing advice and input into the research projects, helping to write reports and publications, and certainly we would love to be visiting with you again. So thank you for that, and that finishes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nara Mao from the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, Queensland University of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Dr. Verena Tandrayan Raghubal, Associate Professor, and Ms. Deepa Gokul Singh, Senior Lecturer, University of Mauritius, to proceed with the presentation of the findings of the research project entitled The Road Traffic Death and Injuries, the Shadow to GDP and Welfare in Mauritius.
Okay, good morning everyone. We will be presenting our research project, which is on road traffic, death and injuries, the impact on GDP and welfare. So basically, we wanted to assess the impact of road accident and injuries on GDP, but also on welfare, on the society, and look at the socio-economic cause of road accident in Mauritius. So a snapshot of the latest indicators for Mauritius, we've been hearing that before, is in terms of accident rate per 100,000 population. We have around 2,341. We also look at the casualty rate per 100,000 population and the fatality index. So we've seen that over the years, there have been an increase in the number of road traffic accidents in Mauritius, and we did some kind of forecasting to see what will be the trend till 2024. And we also analyzed the data over time and looking at vehicles involved in road traffic accident causing casualties. You will see that there has been an increase over time with a slight decrease in the recent years. And you will also see that the main vehicles involved in road traffic accident has been motor and motorcycles, followed by private cars. So we also wanted to compare Mauritius with other countries, not only in the region, African region, but also other developed countries. And we first of all look at mortality caused by road traffic injury per 100,000 population in 2019. We see that Mauritius does much better in relation to other African countries, but also compared to the average of sub-Saharan African countries, but also compared to the average for middle-income countries. The mortality rate in that case for Mauritius stood at 12.2%, but Mauritius is still like lagging behind compared to countries like Singapore, Switzerland, etc. Another important indicator which we looked at was differentiating between casualty and non-injury accident, and we see that non-injury accident has been increasing over time, and the gap between the two has also been enlarged over time. So, our main objective in that study was to look at the impact on GDP. So we adopted a given methodology for that, and we've seen with the data over time that there is a long-run negative impact of road accident, traffic accident and injuries on GDP. And we differentiate between casualties and road traffic accident, and we see that a 1% rise in casualties linked to road accidents lead to a 0.2% decline in real GDP on average. Similarly, when we focus on road accidents, we see that on average, a 1% rise in road accident leads to 0.4% fall in real GDP on average. Now, this study is in line with other studies which have been undertaken by World Bank for middle-income countries, upper middle-income countries, and developing countries. Our coefficient is much higher, slightly higher, sorry, I would say compared to their result, but we are much in line with what they've seen also for other middle-income countries. So what we can say basically is that we've looked at the impact on GDP, but we also wanted to look at the impact on welfare. And we can say that road traffic injuries, the impact goes beyond only looking at the transport sector, but we should look at the whole economy, the welfare of people, families affected by road accidents in Mauritius. So, one important dimension of that study is to look at the cost. How much does it cost the economy? How much do road accident cost in terms of human costs, property damage costs, and general costs? So human costs, we've been looking at loss of productivity, quality of life costs, medical costs. In terms of property damage costs, it will be in terms of vehicle damage costs, non-vehicle damage costs, and also other administrative costs. We differentiate across fatalities, serious injuries, and slight injuries. So, from our study, with the data that we had, data limitation is another constraint that all the 3 studies have encountered. So we see that when we do all the computation, we've reached a figure of 4.5 billion annual cost of road accident in Mauritius, which is around 1% of GDP. But this is kind of, the cost goes beyond that because we had made some assumptions, and we would say that it's more likely to be, with the different costs, around 6 billion annually, which is more in line with 1.25% of GDP. And out of that, we see that human cost has a large component, and we just mentioned that human cost relates to productivity, etc. So the human cost dimension there is very, very important within the total socio-economic cost of road accidents and injuries in Mauritius. So we also differentiated, like I mentioned, in terms of fatalities, serious injuries, and slight injuries. And for total productivity costs, when we differentiate across the different types of injury and fatalities, you will see that, of course, there is a large share for fatalities there. So we encountered data limitations, but with the data that we had, we could say that this is the cost that we got in terms of the impact, socioeconomic cost of road accident and injuries in Mauritius, and see that there is a negative long-term effect on GDP. So we also look at accident cost per vehicle and average road traffic accident cost, which is in that case around 206,903. So rather than looking only at GDP, we also look at welfare, and I would leave that to my colleague to discuss more about the welfare impact.
Thank you, Verena. So, we have been able to do some interviews and focus group discussions. So these are some of the findings. So we could see that injured patients have experienced a lot in terms of physical, social functioning, and also in terms of mental health getting affected. And in terms of delaying to return to work, so some of them took like a month or nearly 1 year. And the multiple injuries make the healing and rehabilitation process much more harder and longer. And in terms of the quality of life also, it makes it much more, it gets affected. We had also some of issues like the son who could not pursue the tertiary education, so that he has to look for a job to sustain his the livelihoods. And also we could find the loss of a member which is being affected. In fact, it affects the family at all the levels in terms of personal, psychological, and also financially. And we could also find and observe that there had been like a few families where the woman who was not working and or was working part-time. So there had been like the entrance of women in the labor market, feminization of work to sustain the livelihood. So especially when the husband had passed away or can no longer work due to health complications. So we could find, based on the findings and analysis, so we came up with some of the policy recommendations. So in terms of psychological support, so it must be provided especially to family members, especially to children who have lost their parents at a very early age. And also all the support structures must be put in place so that being provided by NGOs, having a joint collaboration between NGOs and the government bodies. In terms of campaigns, we have a lot of awareness campaigns, but still we need to make it more visible, make it more, that is much more on a continuous basis. And maybe the last one. Yeah, in terms of data also, we need to have more data. We just mentioned about data being limited, so much more data must be available. And in terms of age, gender, in terms of all the data, in terms of the death rate, that is having all the impact on GDP. So that's all for our project, so that I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Verena Raghuval, Associate Professor, and Ms. Deepa Gokul Singh, Senior Lecturer, University of Mauritius. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier Mr. Dharamdev Nathu highlighted that one of the national road safety strategies for Mauritius is effective communication. In line with this strategy, the Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit, under the aegis of the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail, have undertaken numerous communication campaigns to sensitize the Mauritian population on road safety issues. We will proceed with the viewing of a video clip on road safety campaign.
Bene, diciamo, dovete parlare là, in un po'.
Pour remercier tous qui présents ici, ça vient franchement du cœur. De même, veulent goûter, moi je peux faire mon étude dans les terres de médecine.
Qui fait bizarre arrive ça? Axe dans la route détruit à la vie. Respect la vie des autres quand on l'oscille.
Bene, diciamo, dovete parlare là, in un po'.
Pour remercier tous qui présents ici, ça vient franchement du cœur. De même, veulent goûter, moi je peux faire mon étude dans les terres de médecine.
Qui fait bizarre arrive ça? Axe dans la route détruit à la vie. Respect la vie des autres quand on l'oscille.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will now give the floor to Mrs. Reshma Raghupat, Senior Lecturer, University of Mauritius, to proceed with the presentation of the findings of the research project entitled Understanding Road Users' Behavior and Attitudes in Mauritius.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reshma Raghupat from the University of Mauritius, Faculty of Engineering. So I'm going to present to you my research project that I've been supervising. And so the project is about understanding road users' behavior and attitudes in Mauritius. You've just seen the short clip that had been broadcasted, and you've seen that they have selected a particular age group, right, for this clip. And the reason has been, researched on, and we have certain statistics. So we have met with WHO figures, and we have seen that over 1.25 million of people die yearly in road accidents, and that is, for history, might also increase. Now, road safety addresses our SDGs, as we have been highlighted earlier this morning, and especially SDG 3 and SDG 11. So the objectives were to identify what happens about past and present situations with regards to the crashes that is there in our country. And for this, we relied on the IMAP software by the TMRSU, the statistics from the Statistics Mauritius, and also we had to assess the characteristics of the crashes, we identify the factors and predictors of these crashes, we identified major factors that cause these behavioral perceptions and so on. We also identified major risk factors contributing to road crashes based on the perceptions of the road users. Now, perceptions is something, very, very variable. Now, we tried our best to initiate this project, and we were around few statistics that we have been able to collect. As per global trend, and it is also so for Mauritius, that among the most vulnerable road users are the pedestrians, the cyclists, and motorcyclists. Road accidents, as we've seen earlier, cost our country, and this would also be around 2 to 7% of our GDP. Now, road traffic crashes are usually as a result of interacting factors. And this has been a complicated research project because there were many, many factors and many, many things that we were required to look around. Yes? So, altogether, we tried to identify what were the regions that we need to consider for our questionnaire survey. So questionnaires were devised around research questions that were from literature, and we found these questionnaire distributions and the regions that these were, facilitated for getting data in by our research assistants and project assistants. Now, what happened in the last decade is that road crashes increased by 32.4%. From the IMAP data that we collected, the fatal accidents by car decreased by 11.5%. However, there was an increase of 31% for motorcycles. There has been an overall decrease by 14.5%, however. The number of casualty accidents occurring under the influence of alcohol has increased by 14.8% over the last decade. Now, we'll go on to what is the most vulnerable age group. So we found out that 16 to 25 years old, these young people, 36% of them have been involved in fatal road accidents. Now, 42% of casualty crashes involve legally alcohol-impaired young drivers. Now, 35.3% fatal accidents by car, followed by 23% by motorcycles. These were all the loads of statistics that we have been able to gather, and there are loads also provided in the report. Now, what is it that we stand here? Now, we've been through the study and we covered perceptions based on alcohol consumption, drug consumption, overspeeding, use of mobile phones, bad road conditions, not abiding to road signs, wearing of headphones, drive close into vehicles, mental stress, weather conditions, no proper maintenance of vehicles, eating and drinking, smoking, etc. You will recall that the whole aspect of road safety revolves around the infrastructure, the road users' attitudes and behavior, as well as the vehicle states, right? How the vehicle is maintained. This will say that we have a very high perception that alcohol is, is contributing to road crashes, as we have also witnessed in our report. Now, let's move on to other perceptions: abiding by traffic lights, abiding by road safety signs, wearing of fluorescent jackets, wearing of helmet, driver seatbelt, and the standing sign, seatbelt at the back of, at the rear seats, traffic signs, road markings, safe roads, and brake lighting. Now, you would see that we focus on quite a number of perceptions. And trying to gauging what best data can we gather from existing statistics and from our questionnaire surveys. Again, we have overtaking to the left, changing of lanes without signals, speeding up yellow lights, speeding limit on residential streets, and now again, some of these, more law enforcement, improvement of road infrastructure, education, and awareness campaigns. So we have been able to gather loads of, startup information and a guideline to how to proceed to continuously improve this data set. This is not a one-off capture of data, but it is a dynamic. So to say that And how about education and awareness campaign? So 52.67% agree that education and awareness campaign play a very important role in road safety. And this is also global trends around all the WHO reports that we've read through literature. Now, before that, we are going to consider that, so we've seen about statistics, we've seen that, you know, the age group being vulnerable, we've seen that motorcycles are causing problems and so on. So what is it, and also problems with drivers, like car drivers, like use of mobile phones, no rear seatbelts and so on. So what is it that we require and what that we should do? So there should be pillars that we have tried to identify, and this is again from the target 3.6 of the SDG 3. So around the road safety management, that is to establish a road safety policy addressing all pillars, establish the governance mechanism, to improve data collection and analysis. This is what we are up to with the National Road Safety Observatory, review the funding through our projects, encourage priorities, safer fleets, encourage investment in fleet management, encourage acquisition and use of safer vehicles. So we have data research on this one. Safer road users, post-crash response, safer driving environment. So these would be around this, and our question is, how about now the present enforcement? How about our collaboration with existing collaboration and the strengthening of collaboration among the various stakeholders, the hospital, the police force, the engineering groups, the social economic aspects, and so on. Now, we need to know that this project is just a startup initiative to get in more data, right? And it's more data will also mean to focus on new technologies and new ways to do things here. And we are all drivers here, most of us. So how about now the issue of motorcyclists that are presently, from my observation, the behavior and attitude is quite hazy, and we need to get something around this one. Now, when we look at the behavior, because the research project was around behavior and attitude, I would say that in terms of behavior, we notice that people react rather than respond. So the attitude is important because we need to have the mindset and proper disposition. Now, the attributes, we will all agree, would be to be courteous, polite, non-violent, forgiving, self-started and not frustrated, structured, peaceful, and proactive. All these stem from the safe system approach structure, right? So when we see this age group being most vulnerable, we also have to reflect on how to groom these people right from a very tender age. So we don't need to just only show them the signs and traffic signals and so on, but how to bring in these soft skills among the young ones. Now, we'll say that we should start improving individual responses to the change. We want to see, if we want really to see this change. So it's about choices and the change we want to bring as first as individual, then thinking all very thoroughly for the youngsters and the adults of tomorrow. Now, thank you for your kind attention. It's been a pleasure sharing this presentation to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reshma Raghupat, Senior Lecturer, University of Mauritius. Ladies and gentlemen, pedestrians are undoubtedly the most vulnerable one as road users. And we are all pedestrians at a point of time. So let's watch a short video clip on pedestrian. Duma, lecturer, University of Mauritius, to present the findings of the research project entitled Understanding Pedestrian Use of Crossing Facilities in Mauritius.
I will be presenting the project on pedestrian use of crossing facilities in Mauritius. As we have all said since this morning, we are all pedestrians at some point in time during our day, and we all need a safe place to walk. Although crossing roads forms a minor part of the total walking for a person during his or her trip, this activity is also the one which presents the highest risk because of the interaction with motor vehicles. So statistics for Mauritius has shown that approximately 500 to 700 persons or pedestrians were involved in road crashes annually from 2009 to 2018. These statistics over a 15-year period also show that pedestrians crossing the road accounted for 64% of the crashes involved, with the vast majority of them hit outside of designated pedestrian crossing facilities. So in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, Mauritius adopted the National Road Safety Strategy in May 2016 with the objective of reducing the number of fatalities by 50% by the year 2025. At the same time, SDGs also form an integral part of UN's strategic objectives, with a recent study showing that the university is involved in at least 47 out of the 169 SDG targets. So the main project objectives were to investigate pedestrian perception of crossing facilities, explore the general behavior of pedestrians along roads and at crossing facilities, and lastly, investigate pedestrian perception on the attitudes of other road users at crossings and on sensitization campaigns being carried out by the ministry. So, for the project findings, in the high-speed environment, 3 types of pedestrian crossing facilities which are usually encountered either along motorways or dual carriageways were considered and were surveyed. So the first one is a grade separated facility, either footbridges or underpasses. Second one is a signalized crossing facilities, and the third one is a zebra crossing facility. And out of these 3, it was seen that pedestrians prefer grade separated facilities for crossing dual carriageways and other high-speed roads. However, approximately 1 out of every 3 females consider that the pedestrian footbridge or the underbridges are unsafe due to security reasons and prefer not to use them and adopt a risky behavior. In the urban environment, again 3 types of different crossings were considered: the zebra crossing, which is commonly encountered, the pelican crossing, and the newly implemented one by the TMSU, the speed table with a pedestrian crossing facility. And the research has shown that the speed table with a pedestrian crossing is the facility that is being considered by road users as the safest compared to the other 2. It was also noted that respondents generally found the pelican crossing as safe, but this perception decreases for persons above 45 years old due to the time being given for them to cross the road, which is considered to be inadequate. So, for the behavior of pedestrians, we have seen that from the survey, 1 in 4 pedestrians confirmed that they engage in non-compliant behavior at signalized crossings, with 40% of interviewees admitting that they cross outside pedestrian crossing when they are in a hurry. This makes us having to review maybe in terms of pedestrian timings, how much time we allocate for pedestrians to obtain the green phase. On another note, we have also seen that 40% of persons surveyed admitted to walking on the roadway when walking with a friend or when overtaking another pedestrians, showing that maybe we need to start, authorities need to start thinking about reviewing the pedestrian width, which may be inadequate for people walking. And survey admitted having crossed the road without paying attention, just like we have seen in the clip. So maybe more enforcement and rules in terms of not only drivers being inattentive, but also for pedestrians along the road. In terms of road users, other road users and sensitization campaigns, people surveyed have confirmed that car drivers are more likely to reduce their speed when approaching a crossing facility and give way to pedestrians as compared to motorcyclists and cyclists. 20% of persons surveyed are not aware that crossing the road outside designated crossing facilities is a risky behavior, and 60% of persons surveyed only have seen or heard sensitization campaigns on road safety, showing that we still have a long way in terms of sensitization campaigns in order to target all road users. In terms of project recommendations, a few pertinent ones which have been made are the implementation of a pedestrian safety action plan with clear objectives which are both evidence-informed and smart. We should adopt the safe system approach, both for upgrading existing roads and constructing our new roads. The authorities should develop a pedestrian facility audit and selection tool in order to adopt the best possible pedestrian facility which suits the environment where it is being implemented. We should ensure that adequate provision is made for pedestrians in new infrastructure projects. We should try to incorporate intelligent transport systems so that we create smarter roadways. And lastly, we should implement law enforcement and new regulations in order to have safer vehicles and safer road users. So on a concluding note, this project has provided a situational assessment of pedestrian safety in Mauritius and constitutes a first step in understanding the local pedestrian safety situation, and studies worldwide have shown that significant improvement to pedestrian safety requires a balanced approach which includes engineering, education, and also enforcement measures. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed Zahid Numa, lecturer, University of Mauritius. Ladies and gentlemen, the findings from all these projects are indeed compelling, which witness state coordinated efforts from all, including the private and public sectors, NGOs, and all the citizens of Mauritius. We will now move forward with the viewing of the last video clip on sensitization campaign.
Qui fait un bizarre arrive ça? Accident dans la route détruit à la vie. Respect la vie des autres comme on l'oscille.
Ladies and gentlemen, all these video clips are actually a call for action to change our behavior on the road. Without further delay, I have the honor and privilege to welcome the Honorable Anangani, Minister of Land Transport and Light Rail, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, to deliver his speech.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony. Mrs. Caudan Arts, PS of the Minister of Land Transport and Light Rail. Professor Dante, Vice Chancellor, University of Mauritius. Mr. Tuju, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Traffic Branch. Professor Howes, distinguished invitees from the private sector, Mr. Natu, Director TMRSU, ladies and gentlemen. I am indeed glad to be amongst you this morning for the presentation of the research findings on road accidents of the Road Safety Observatory of my ministry, which my ministry carried out in collaboration with the University of Mauritius and the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety from the University of Queensland. This is the first of its kind, and the research projects undertaken were on the topics which we are all aware of by now. We have already have had a look at the presentation, the different presentations. The implementation of the Road Safety Observatory was advocated in the National Road Safety Strategy 2016 to 2025. As Mr. Natu, I think, informed us at the beginning of the function. It was of the view that academia, through the scientific study of the road and traffic system, can contribute in finding ways to reduce the number of road crashes or their severity. The observatory was subsequently set up by my ministry in collaboration with the University of Mauritius and the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety from the University of Queensland, Australia in 2020. And MOU was consequently signed with the University of Mauritius and the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety from the University of Queensland. And the avowed objective of the observatory was still is to advise on measures to reduce the number of road accidents on all their severity based on the three pillars, namely those of research, capacity building, and outreach. Its mandate is to conduct research, capacity building, and outreach in partnership with government and industry to improve road safety in our country. Specifically, the observatory will be responsible for leading research into road safety issues, developing effective, regionally appropriate responses, developing and delivering comprehensive and effective training, coordinating data, monitoring and reporting, and serving as a center of excellence and as a hub for practical and effective advice. The observatory will create and update a website as an outreach tool, and this website will also serve as a repository for the research findings which will be shared with all stakeholders involved in road safety. The observatory would include raised awareness of road safety in the country, assessment of specific road safety problems through data-led research, achieving progress and excellence in the management of road safety in Mauritius, and the development of effective and accessible training programs. In the first instance, 4 research projects have been approved to be conducted, and as we have just seen, the observatory has already completed the first 3 projects which we have just presented to you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the National Road Safety Observatory, in collaboration with the University of Mauritius, we will continue to undertake research projects in priority areas of road safety, the findings and recommendations of which will be analyzed for formulation of policies and implementation of corrective measures and actions for enhanced road safety. As we have seen, the reports have underlined the dearth of data and other shortcomings in data capture, management, and the coordination among agencies. Data capture by some stakeholders, unfortunately, was not systematic. The capture and management of data information was highly disorganized and dissociated. Data and figures were also not up to date and not captured in real time. Therefore, 2019 figures were used in these studies which we have just been presented with. Therefore, the need for a harmonization of data was emphasized, as were the requirements for different stakeholders in the data value chain to communicate and adopt a collaborative approach for data and information capture in real time. The setting up of an integrated platform for data management information system among the different agencies was also advocated. These findings and recommendations of these projects will be analyzed at the level of my ministry for formulation of policies and implementation of corrective measures and actions for enhanced road safety. The straightforward recommendations are being executed, while the other recommendations which need further or in-depth analysis will be implemented according to a defined timeline. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, few people realize the sheer magnitude of road accidents as they are everyday occurrence. This epidemic poses a socio-economic challenge both at the domestic and global level, as over 1.3 million lives are destroyed annually, as we just heard earlier on, and a further 50 million people suffer varying degrees of injuries and disabilities as a result thereof. The consequences are enormous, in that it increases the liability on the social security and the welfare system of a country, in addition to leading to the loss of skills and rising costs to the economy. However, what is of most importance is the loss of lives and the psychological and mental trauma that it brings to families, most especially children. It is with this sadness that we are still counting the number of persons who are losing their lives on our roads. For this year alone, the number of persons who died on our road stood at 71, and as of 6 September 2021, with 68 fatal road accidents. The number of riders involved in fatal road accidents was at around half of the figures. Over the past 5 years, as per road crash statistics, road crash fatalities average 144 annually. And as of 6 September of this year, 71 persons have lost their lives in road crashes against 80 for the same period last year. For the year 2018, 2019 and 2020, the number of persons killed on our roads were 144, and 131 respectively. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, road safety should be a matter of concern for everyone, and undoubtedly we must pursue our efforts to act. Government, the private sector, the civil society, and the common citizen, we all have the joint responsibility to reduce the incidence of road accidents, injuries, and fatalities. The safety of our road users remains a priority for our government, and as such, much effort has been and is still being exercised by my ministry to consolidate the existing road safety measures while introducing new ones. In the face of the increasing number of road accidents, injuries and fatalities in recent years, my ministry, through the National Road Safety Strategy, has reinforced its commitment to significantly, as far as it is in its realm, to reduce mortality and morbidity resulting from road accidents. To address the road safety issue, a series of measures with accompanying legislation are being put in place. Likewise, my ministry is committed to promoting awareness and to ensuring that our roads are safe and stepping them up to new levels. We believe in stakeholders' participation and responsibility in promoting road safety. My ministry has reviewed its road safety audit standards in line with international best practices to ensure that all safety considerations for road users are inbuilt at the conception, design and implementation stages of all new road infrastructural projects. The system of driver licensing and training is also being enhanced to improve the competence and capability of drivers. In collaboration with the police and the MITD, my ministry will soon set up a drivers education and training center. Since the number of riders killed on our roads is more than half, my ministry will, as from January 2022, compel all drivers of electric auto motorcycles to wear helmet, fluorescent jacket, and pass the driving test in order to improve the safety of the riders on our roads. If they fail to do so, they will be contravened. I seize this opportunity to make an appeal to owners of electric motorcycles to proceed with the registration process. Ladies and gentlemen, several accidents have occurred on the motorway M1 at Sorèze, involving heavy vehicles which have cost the lives of innocent people, affecting many families. The most memorable and recent one is the accident which occurred on the 5th of November last year involving a contract bus where 4 Bangladeshi workers lost their lives. At that time, it was supposed that the driver could be taking the bend along the slip lane at a too high speed as one of the contributing factors for the accident. It has been observed that runaway trucks and buses have no alternative of slowing down along the steep slope on the northbound carriageway at Sorèze, Montebello. After assessment and as a corrective measure to save the lives of people, my ministry intends to provide an escape lane together with an arrestor bed, which is a device specifically constructed to slow down and stop heavy vehicles that encounter braking problems when descending the steep slope at Sorèze, Montebello. I have already effected a site visit on the chosen site this week to visit the location, and the best option is still being studied in terms of the exact mechanism to be put in place. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations advocated the introduction of 30 kilometers per hour zones in towns and villages, which are being used by pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists in order to reduce the severity of road crashes. My ministry has started to set speed limits below the national speed limits in portries, for instance in the major roads in Popelesi Street, La Bourdonnais Street, Volsipouget Street, and Temple Castro Street, among others, where the speed would be set at 40 kilometers per hour, whilst on all lateral roads abutting on these main collector streets, the speed would be limited at 30 kilometers per hour. This project will be extended to other towns and major villages. Ladies and gentlemen, my ministry is equally coming up with the implementation of the law to consider drug driving as an offence. I am informed that there has been some delay in the implementation of the law since the procurement of the equipment to measure drugs in the saliva, urine and blood samples had to be launched again until technically responsive bids could be received. With the implementation of the law, if any person who has been under the influence of a drug or an intoxicating substance rides a cycle or on a road or drives a motorcycle on the road, he shall commit an offence, as per the new section of the Road Traffic Amendment Act. The Act provides severe penalties if the person under the influence of an illicit drug or therapeutic drug above the threshold limit or an intoxicating substance causes the death of another person by driving a motor vehicle on a road or public place without due care and attention. I will come forward with a proper sensitization campaign to apprise the public once all the equipment is prescribed in the law and the Act is proclaimed, to specifically provide for more details to the general public. The Road Traffic Act will be amended also to increase the number of cumulative road traffic offences from 11 to 30. The draft regulations is at the level of the State Law Office. In addition, it has been noticed that an astonishing number of parents allowing their children to travel in vehicles without being properly restrained, placing their lives and safety at risk. A properly fitted restraint system keeps the child in their seat, preventing them from being thrown about, inside or being thrown from the vehicle. It also absorbs some of the impact force, meaning that the child is much less likely to be killed or to be injured in a crash. My ministry is working in close collaboration with the Ministry of Commerce and Consumer Protection for the putting up of the relevant regulations to that effect. Road traffic injury, ladies and gentlemen, is a leading cause of death for young people aged 15 and 29. So education for the proper use of road infrastructure is essential to prevent our children and our young people to become victims of road crashes. The starting point for any road safety education program is to understand what the problems are and accordingly to introduce a continuum of the road safety education program from pre-primary up to the tertiary level. I must add that with the collaboration of the Ministry of Education, road safety education is being delivered at primary level. Well-equipped traffic children playground have been put in place for delivering practical road safety education in all our primary schools. Training of resource persons on practical aspects, which was unfortunately interrupted in view of the pandemic, would resume soon. Discussions have started with the Minister of Education on the implementation of road safety education at secondary level, and a curriculum has to be worked out with them. Thereafter, further actions will be pursued at the tertiary level. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, and to conclude, may I look forward to have more applied research that may help our fellow citizens in the field of road safety, given the fact that road safety remains a live issue. I would like to thank the University of Mauritius and the researchers for this good job. Undoubtedly, this study is conducted and the findings have drawn our attention to new issues and to new elements which we will take on board in devising our youth policies, as I just said earlier. But I would like also to place on record, ladies and gentlemen, my thanks and gratitude to all the stakeholders engaged in the issue of road safety, our police force, the TMRSU, the NGOs, the University of Mauritius, the private sector, for their commitment to champion this cause. But in the last analysis, a lot rests on our citizenry, on our drivers, on our cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, and road users in general. I have on many occasions appealed to our road users and pedestrians to act responsibly and with as much courtesy as possible. I have usually repeated that la route est un espace commun qu'il nous faut tous partager d'une façon responsable. It is therefore also a matter of promoting a new awareness, enhancing a new culture of respect, courtesy, tolerance, and discipline. Therefore, let us spare no efforts in bringing a change in the road safety culture and continue assuming our responsibility to save the lives of our people. Every human life is worth saving. On this note, I wish you all a very good day. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Arangani, Minister of Transport and Highway, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade. Your dedication and action to alleviate road accidents in Mauritius is indeed remarkable. I would now call on the floor Professor Dhananjay Jury, Vice Chancellor of the University of Mauritius, to hand over the research findings to Honorable Arangani, Minister of Land Transport and Highway, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. invite Honorable Minister to hand over the research findings to Mrs. Shakuntala Devi Gadadaunova, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Land Transport and Library. To Mr. Dharam Devnatu, Director, Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit. Mr. Maula Bakas, General Manager of the
Monsieur le ministre, un peu plus devant s'il vous plaît.
Of the Road Development Authority. Mr. Muktadin Toju, Deputy Commissioner of Police.
Monsieur Toju.
Thank you, Honorable. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the presentation. On behalf of the Ministry of Land Transport and Light Rail, I wish to thank all who have contributed to the success of this function and all the members of the press present. I wish to welcome all of you to join us for refreshment down in the lobby. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention, and I wish to